Next category, wildest predictions. This is interesting. Curious to hear what you guys think. Steven, you want to kick this one on?
Wildest prediction. We've seen a little bit of shakeup in the space. Couple shops that have closed down. I think there's going to be some shop consolidation this year. I think that shops that have been around are going to start to put their heads together and say, why don't we put our businesses together? Because I think we're all getting to a point where we recognize what we're good at, we recognize what we're bad at, and we're not afraid to ask for help. And I think we know what we want. And so I think as those businesses start to mature, those mature decisions for quality of life are going to start to happen. So I predict shops will be bought, sold, or consolidated this year. There you go.
I don't want to throw shade, and I don't want to bring it up to whoever it is, but there is a shop that kind of some shit happened with recently, and it's terrifying. Like stuff like that. It's like,
I mean, you can mention it. I think it's everywhere. Are you talking about Second City Prints?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't going to say anything, but Bruce, I guess, will.
I mean, it's like all over. Like every group, I think, is talking about it, or text group, or Facebook group.
And I don't know what happened. It's not my shop. It's whatever. I can make assumptions as to why it happened because I know their market and I know like what they do. But again, like it's just to like I've been there. I've toured that place and I was in awe of that place and I know people there, and to just know that like shit like that happens where they have to just be like, hey, we have to shut our doors, and you know everything's getting like we're talking in groups about what's getting sold and what equipment prices are going to be and all this other stuff, and it's like I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be on the chopping block and have people be like, well, I'm going to buy this press and what kind of deal could I get on this and everything else. And it's like I feel like the big shop, the mentality of being like, oh, I have like 18 autos and I want to strive to have this massive warehouse with all these people is not as appealing anymore. And it's not going to happen. And I've said it a couple times, like, I feel like more and more in the future now, it's going to be like, oh yeah, I have a 6 color and 8 color auto and I have 3 or 4 of them, and anything over 6 colors is going to be digital. And, you know, I'm running screen printing, but it's the 1, 2, 3 color prints. And I'm going to keep it to 10, 12 employees because I have 6 people that can run a heat press and 6 people that can run an auto or work the office. And even now, like we were just talking the other day about how fucking AI is basically going to have a thing where it can be our entire customer service team and get back to emails instantly and like everything else. It's like, what's that going to change in a year when you don't even need office staff?
Yeah, that's actually, that's my wildest prediction. So I took this to mean something that you wouldn't see coming, but it still, I guess, is a prediction. So maybe that's a paradox, but I would say that AI will replace, and I wrote down half the workforce because I think ultimately it may, but I mean a giant chunk of the workforce. You're going to see layoffs. I think you'll see a weird shift happen, or shuffle, maybe you should say, like a reshuffle, because it's going to do so much, you know, like in a situation where you're, yeah, I mean, it's wild. And so what happens to those teams? You know, do they find, you know, where do they go? Like, do we shift back to production here in the States? You know, what happens? And so I don't know, but I think that obviously it's not going to happen overnight, but I think it's going to happen faster than we think. And so, yeah, I predict a lot of like a big, I guess, like a shuffle, if you would, is what I would call it. Yeah, a reshuffle.
Yeah. That's what I had. I had 2 things. I think one was I was wondering if all the large press manufacturers were the money that they spent on, you know, digital printing and DTG related equipment is now pivoted and spent on DTF or heat press related equipment. Like, what is the innovation that could really happen there? That could be fascinating, right? I mean, some of those machines right that are put together are $500,000 to $1 million to get started. And obviously must have required millions to even get to that point of being production ready. So, you know, could that pivot really drive some really cool innovation in the space to help a lot of shops? I feel absolutely. And then my second one was definitely artificial intelligence, which feels like the new naming of like machine learning, but is the practical version now where like anybody can make like a, Market can make this GPT thing, or, I was we were working on Steven's Printavo data and just asking it questions about reporting, and you can create charts, you could, tables, anything you want, it'll analyze it. It's unbelievable. And does it replace people though? I do think though it just shifts people where, it's like agriculture when tractors and things came in, you're not using plows and cattle and so on. It's just like people shifted. Maybe you're maintaining the tractors, or you're driving the tractors, or you're selling the tractors, or whatever. And so I think the markets will definitely shift, but absolutely for the better. I'm not sure if anybody really wants to be answering customer service questions on a repetitive thing that a bot can be able to respond back to and handle better.
I mean, for me, like, I'm a foil hat guy. So, and I don't know, things scare me like that, but it's also like, do we as the general public have like the fucking easy bake oven version of this shit? And then the people who are smarter than us and closed doors groups, do they have like the supercomputer version of this where like stuff like that it's going to take over the world, and we're all thinking like, oh, this cool little chat GPT thing that's like I wrote my paper with it, but really they have shit that's going to replace like big business and the way the world works.
Well,
that's what scares me.
If you think about our industry, right, like the big companies in our space, the custom inks, the printfuls, they probably have dedicated AI teams, right? Like several engineers that are just innovating on it. I think that's where Dylan, like the easy bake, we don't know what's going to come. We don't know what custom ink could come out with in a second. You're like, oh crap. Right. And so that I think is probably the scariest part. But I think for us, I'm excited because it gives our employees more like bandwidth, right? Like one person can answer more customer service emails instead of, what they normally do. So I think it's just giving our teams better tools that make their job easy, that we think is second nature now. So
yeah, it does feel like a huge efficiency boost to do whatever you're doing before versus the full replacement yet. That's a good point.
I will say I feel bad for artists that can draw by hand, like the Wacom tablet guys, because it's like, damn, like I made some on GPT that was like, this would have taken forever to cartoon. So I kind of feel bad for them.
There's a bunch of designers that I follow just because I'm interested in that kind of thing. And there's one who always shares his knowledge on like to other designers of like, this is how you should, do your pay structure or whatever. Like, this is what you are actually worth and all this other stuff. And he goes through and he's like, oh, here's a beginner pricing thing. And it was like, by the time he got through it, it's like charge for your time, charge for this, charge for revisions. It was like $1,200 for a design, like a t-shirt design or whatever. I was like, dude, in what world is that going to fly anymore? When you can just go, Andy made a fucking graphic for us for a chat for like 2 seconds. And it was like, I could go into these things, especially like I talked about this last episode, but I went to M&R and went in the players room and sat down, and it was like, hey, do you want to come up with a design in an idea right now? Between idea to printed shirt was less than 5 minutes. And it was like, I came up with it was a dumb idea, but like it was complicated looking design. And it was like high res, perfect, beautiful, printed, done shirt in less than 5 minutes. It was a Sasquatch alien fighting a mech guy on another world. And it was like fully awesome and done in fucking like 3 minutes.
Hopefully they were able to do that on a 1717 for you.
They actually didn't have a 1717 stock.
Well,
and I requested one.
You threw it on the ground.
The funny thing is I have it.
3001.
Like, I don't even think I'm going to wear it. I just brought it to the shop to show them like, dude, this is fucking what we're up against. You know what I mean? Like, we need to stay on it because this is what's happening. This is what's coming. And I don't know. Everything's changing so fast now. It's insane.
The last point on this, I think, Steven, you said this in your talk that really hit was the generation that's growing up with this stuff and not sort of adapting to it. Like we are kind of rolling with the punches and adapting is just going to be at such an advantage coming in, like Gen Z or, people now that they use it for their homework, they use it for day-to-day stuff versus like our kind of special projects. I mean, gosh, they're going to quickly think of these solutions like way faster and be able to get to solve problems a lot quicker. So those business owners are going to be powerful.
Yeah,
It's
if
like
I were
even-
a teacher, go ahead.
Even my kids, my fucking 11-year-old, and she brought home math homework the other night that was like word problems. And she sat there with her tablet and just asked Siri all the questions. She
Yeah,
didn't even
so
have to do it. She was just like, what is the blah, 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 blah. And Siri was like, this is the answer. And just like, it was done and over with. It was like,
Yeah.
where was that shit when we were kids? Like I had to cheat off of people. She's just like asking the internet. But then I got to thinking about it too. I'm like, how can the teachers argue this at this point? It's like, you know, back when we were kids, it was like, you can't use a calculator. It's like everybody has access to this shit right now. Like I know
You
they're
could
supposed
shut
to
down
absorb
the
it and learn it, but like
internet or Wi-Fi.
okay, if the internet goes down and the world's
I mean,
fucked.
at the school
like,
or
I'm not
whatever,
worried about
you know?
your math at that point.
But he pulls
but
the plug like his dial up on the shop.
Dylan, if an artist applies for you today and they're a Chat GPT, Dolly, Midjourney, just wizard versus an artist that can do stuff traditionally by hand, who are
I
you
feel like
hiring?
it's just as good.
I mean, it's like give them kudos for learning how to use the keys that
It's just a
that's
tool. Like
Right.
they have
But
the
I'm
next
sure they're
set of
way
tools.
faster at doing it with revisions and everything else.
And more importantly, your it's budget also, like budget friendly. So it's free or it's $20 a month versus thousands a month, right? So I would say that sometimes it comes down to just finances.
Yeah. I mean,
You're not-
obviously, like my heart and my soul wants to see a guy or a girl like hand draw a design and go through the whole process. And it's got all this, you know, their brush strokes or whatever and everything in it. But
Mhm.
in reality, I have a customer that comes to me and says, I want a fucking wizard riding a unicorn fighting kittens. And the guy who hand draws it, I have to give him the idea, get a sketch 6 days later. And then that sketch gets turned into something that they drew out and colored and everything else. And then another revision. Here we are 2 weeks later.
Mhm.
Whereas this wizard that comes in and knows everything about AI can crank it out in 3 minutes. And he's like, hey, here's a print ready art file. Send it off to the customer to get approved, which is probably automatic anyway, because there's some fucking Zaps or apps or some bullshit that fucking sends it off. And then it's done in like a half an hour. That's the argument, is like,
Yeah.
you can't argue with that.